Hi everyone. Hi Annette. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're absolutely honored and happy to have you here as part of our DX stories, our digital transformation stories. And before we kick off our conversation, I'm just going to briefly explain a bit the purpose behind this initiative as well as about Access Partnership and State Up. Access Partnership is the leading public policy firm specialized in the tech sector, and StateUp focuses on data research and upskilling related to public purpose technology to bridge the divide between the two worlds of governance and technology. The purpose behind this initiative is to provide a platform for people like yourself that are leading and inspiring other leaders to carry out this digital transformation process, to share their stories so we can all learn from them and act upon recommendations that you have. In other words, our main goal is to contribute to the international debate on digital transformation. So, because all of that, we are absolutely thrilled to have you here, Anett, like I said. So, thank you again. You're a digital transformation advisor at e-Estonia, and your role is precisely to explain the very successful Estonian digitalization experience and to inspire other leaders, other policymakers to work towards a more digital world. So there's no better match between DX stories and yourself. So we're very happy to have you here. Would you mind telling us a bit more about your work at Estonia and about the agency itself?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, and the honor is from my side to be participating here and to sharing my work and then, of course, also the story of Estonia. I've been working at the Estonia Briefing Center as a digital transformation advisor already for the past 2 years and 7 months, approximately, if I remember correctly. It's been a great journey, I gotta say, and my job is especially to be a person who is meeting the other governments, the other ministers, presidents, and of course also private sector delegations that visit us. So what we try to do there, as Estonia is leading when it comes to using technology in the governmental sector, is to explain what we have been doing here, how we have doing this, and of course also there is no country that is alone in the world anymore. And I feel that we have to help each other also to avoid mistakes. We shouldn't invent things from the scratch again anymore, but we should really follow what countries are doing and how they have been doing these things to really learn from each other mistakes, and of course also from the not only for the mistakes but also the lessons to see really what works. And this is what we really try to do at the Estonia Briefing Center, is to host delegations to help them, and usually they come with a very specific need. So usually there is a government, a parliament coming and saying we would like to implement this specific solution on our national level. It's working already in your country, could you help us also to do that in our state? And then we try to put them together with our ICT companies, so our private companies, because obviously the state has not developed anything by itself, but put together with our ICT companies, so the private sector fully. And we try to put these other like countries and delegations together with our private companies so that they could kind of like work together and again help each other and support in this process. So we are like this kind of central governmental body that supports the export of our ICT companies, and then is also kind of like an ambassador organization.
Wow, that sounds amazing. It's very interesting. I wanted to pick up on what you said and maybe ask you another question. Today, Estonia, hopefully not for very long, but you were one of the still very few countries in the world that have a digital ecosystem where 99% of government services are online. But this process hasn't started now. On the contrary, it's a process that started 20 years ago, maybe. And my question is, when you started back then, 20 years ago, what were the main challenges, not from only a technology perspective, but also from a policy perspective?
One thing is actually very important, as you especially said, we started 20 years ago, and usually when delegations also come, they're like, okay, it hasn't happened, like how fast it has happened, all of this. And we have a like great wall. So if you ever come and visit us at the Estonian Roofing Center, we have an entire wall that shows the years also in which year something was implemented, and making comparison also what was happening in a word exactly at the same time, where like for example when Facebook was invented, Estonia was already voting online, and all these kind of comparisons. So going to the legal side and the technology side, so when we jump 20 years back, then I don't think many of us here even had mobile phones. I was very young at that time, and seriously, that was completely a different time when we think about technology. Not many people had computers at home, and again, the knowledge and the awareness of the technology was somewhere else. So of course, I could say that it was maybe a little bit easier for us to push everything through from the parliament side because people didn't really have awareness what this is about, but our government luckily had some people there that had the IT background supporting them. But when we usually talk about the legal side and technology and comparing them by the percentage how important something is, then we always say 80% of our success story is based on decision making part and all the legal side, and then 20% of technology, because technology is just a very tiny part of the entire chains. It always happens here from our heads if we are willing to make changes in our society and trying out something new as well. So it really requires the decision makers to be risk aware and open to try new things and be fully innovative. That's the most important thing, because technology in every country is basically the same. And if somebody thinks that technology in Estonia is somewhere else and something on another level, I gotta tell you it's not. It has never been different. And of course, by the problems sides that you were referring to, so actually there were three major problems that Estonia had back in early 90s, where we were starting to think about technology. So these three problems that really like pushed us to start digitalization were actually high level of corruption, having no trust between government agencies and the citizens, and a very low budget. These were the three major problems that actually pushed us to start trying technology in the state sector, because technology can bring much more transparency, can help you to get rid of bureaucracy, and of course also this influences your budget because bureaucracy is very expensive. And then of course also helps you to get rid of corruption side too, because everything is much more, again, transparent, as I talked about, and people can really see what the government agencies are doing with their information. So this is extremely important to understand about that. We were not just thinking here that everything was great, then we're going to just start using something fancy on a national level. There were so big problems that we needed to solve very fast, and we saw technology as one of the solutions to do so. And I can tell you today that Estonia has one of the lowest level of corruption cases, and the trust level towards our public institutions is one of the highest. And at the same time, again, our bureaucracy level is one of the smallest. So it really managed to get rid of these problems thanks to technology. So definitely also, if I could bring it out some other issues, or again, when we started using technology, the public awareness of technology itself was very low at that time. So of course we needed to put a lot of money into raising awareness and educational initiatives and so on as well. Because I always feel like when different governments start with their digitalization process, there is no point of just building very fancy and difficult services. What you should actually do is definitely to cover your state with a good internet connection, make it available to everybody, and then at the same time provide as much as like education and awareness to every single person. And especially when we talk about the elderly and the students and so on, like it's so important to not leave anybody behind. So it has to be fully inclusive, and I think this is something that every state needs to understand before they do any steps by building up their strategies.
Just as a follow up, do you think the countries that are starting now, and possibly because of the same reasons, to fight corruption, to reduce bureaucracy, to increase trust, do you think they will possibly face the same challenges that you faced back then? Or do you think what has changed since then, like in the past 10, 20
Mhm.
years?
Well, many issues are still the same, as we still see, and I have personally lived in many other countries too, turning my studies. and where I could still see that even some of the Western European countries are still having a very high level of bureaucracy, which is again super expensive and so on. But today, of course, there is maybe even larger amount of problems when you talk about also the public awareness of technology is pretty high, but there is also a lot of mis and disinformation about this. So that people talk about, like, again, how somebody's manipulating with their data, and some people are fully against of having any data stored by the government online and so on, which again shows that they're actually lacking of the real knowledge. So countries need to also spend a lot of time on explaining how things work and show that this is actually fair and the data protection has been provided there, and the integrity of data is there. So definitely the privacy part has become more important than 20 years ago, and there is a lot of public discussion about how do you store information, what to do with somebody's information, and people are more aware and kind of like more demanding too, I would say. But definitely some of the issues are still remaining the same, and that's why again we try to be very open with the issues that we had back in that time and explain how we managed to come over of these issues as well. So definitely times have been changing, but some problems still remain the same.
Annette, I have a question about the advice you provide people when they come to visit you. The digital transformation of organizations, whether it's an entire country or a private business, is more than about simply upgrading IT infrastructure. In your opinion, what are the main building blocks that a leader driving digital transformation within their country should have in mind when starting or even just planning this journey?
When I said in the beginning also that again, when we think about the building block side and the infrastructure side, then the trust has to be in the very middle of this conversation from the very beginning already. And the proper infrastructure needs to be there also beforehand. So we have decided that people's privacy comes first, the security comes first. But again, as I put it up before, having a proper, again, access to internet is a must thing that everybody needs to start with. And secondly, of course, also, again, the educational background side. These things by the infrastructure, I don't mean the IT infrastructure needs to be 100% there, but again, just the awareness and then the interconnection and so on. So this is where we usually suggest countries to start with, because there is still plenty of examples also of countries that have plenty of services already working, functioning online. But when we look at the numbers of people that are actually using the services, it's very low. And they're really struggling, really getting people on board and to really like the services. So the other thing besides building an IT infrastructure is also how do you communicate when something is already functioning online. So I think also this is very, very essential so that we communicate the benefits of using online services to our people. Just a very practical examples here. One of the first services that we introduced online was declaring taxes since 1999 already, so the past 22 years. And why was it is again because I mean declaring taxes is one of the most commonly used services in Estonia, and in general too, like in every country, almost everybody who work have to declare their taxes. So that service really influences everybody. And we made this service way more attractive than doing these things on paper or just going physically to the office. So just an example here, if you declare your taxes by the online platform, first of all, it takes you only 1 single minute. And you will get your tax return on your account already in 2 weeks' time. In 2 weeks' time, this is already on your account. But now, when you decide to go physically to the Tax and Customs Board office, it is going to take you 3 to 4 months to have your money on your account. So if you communicate these things to your citizens saying that, hey, we will provide you the online service that will also have a very fast delivery so that you can get your money, you can get your stuff done very quickly, and of course also much cheaper. So also with many like updating new driving licenses or any kind of other licenses, if you do that online, it's going to cost you way less than doing these things physically going to the office. So that's one of the ways as well that you need to communicate these things. If you have an infrastructure, internet connection, awareness, services slowly like being built, then communicate these things and really spend money on that, because people are not just going to go and figure it out these things by themselves. They need to see what am I winning by using the services when they are based online. That's one of the things that I always have to mention to our decision makers, that you gotta communicate the benefits to your people.
Definitely, thank you. And it's very easy to be envious of that tax situation coming from the US, or I know in a lot of other contexts as well. I'd like to follow up on that one and learn a bit more about these kind of international groups that come visit you and you show them around. I'm curious, what are some of their main questions usually, or what are the things that surprise them maybe the most about the visits that they have?
I've got to start with saying that if I think about it, really, of course, varies which countries these delegations come from, what are the main questions. When we speak about like some of the Western European countries, then usually privacy aspect. And the same goes actually for US as well. When we have US delegations, that usually the first thing that they're going to refer to. But what about privacy? How do I know that somebody's not just checking my information online? All the things, of course, also with the cybersecurity remain very important. When we have public sector delegations from, for example, local or the general government side, then one of the very common questions is also people are very concerned about, but are people who are working in public sector, are they going to lose their jobs? If you use technology and we're just going to take away what they have done in the past 50 years or more. And that actually not true. I'm not saying that nothing is going to change by the aspects what kind of job they do. Of course, we have much less clerks working and accepting papers and doing these very manual things because this is all already fully automated. What we have been doing is just providing lifelong learning, which means that we try to provide proper education again also for the like professional workshops to our people that are working in the public sector, so that they can learn new skills and move on to the next level and actually focus on more meaningful tasks than just dealing with very manual things anymore.
Thank you, and I think that's a topic we'll touch later in the interview. It's a really interesting one. In Estonia's experience, it seems like one of the most important factors that helped to streamline the government structures, authorities, and databases was the once only principle. Can you please explain what this principle is and why it's important? And what were or are the other main principles that have guided Estonia's process of digitalization?
So first of all, I got a question for you before I explain once only. You live in US. How many public institutions store information where you live in US?
My personal information, probably
Yeah, you're
tens or
yeah,
more,
I'm speaking
100,
about your personal address where you live, your home address.
lots.
Yeah.
Local, town, county, state, federal, and more.
Okay. In Estonia, there is only one single registry that knows where I live, and this is population registry. This is what one Sunny policy is about. So, for example, if I change my home address, then I do only have to update this home address on one single platform, and this is only population registry. Why this is so important? Because from the citizen's perspective, we do not want our citizens to be overwhelmed with, oh my god, I changed my home address, I need to go update that in this platform, I also need to call this institution, they all need to know where I live. No, if you have changed that in one single registry which has a right to store and know information where you live, then that's about it. If anybody else, if somebody from Tax and Custom Board or police wants to know where you live, they need to go and ask this from population registry, not from you. And they do that through our decentralized data exchange layer. So that doesn't mean that anybody from any public institution can just randomly go and ask where Riley or Paula lives. It's not like that. They need to have a legal agreement between each other so that they show the reasons. Why would we need to know somebody's home address? There has to be a reason. And then they request this information by automatical system, goes with seconds like that, not by exchanging emails or calling somebody. By exchanging the information, of course, time-stamped, encrypted, and again comes to my data tracker that I can see the Tax and Custom Board was asking for my home address in this specific platform. But again, from the citizen's perspective, I know that there is no duplication of my information. It's only in one single registry, and we do this with every single part of our information. The other maybe principle I could bring it out here is also citizen-centric. So whenever we design services, we try to do as much as research and really like test it with people so that we would always put citizen in a centric to make this service very easily usable, understandable as well for everybody. And that's why we also try to keep them in a central when it comes to the privacy aspects and really reflecting how things work. So maybe these are the most essential things that show how flexible and how simple the entire system is, and maybe also the simple and short principle, which means that whenever we design something, we try to do that as simple and short as possible.
If I may jump in, I want to touch on something that you've been saying quite a lot, and I think it's a very important topic that we should probably expand on, which is the correlation between digital transformation and trust. And nowadays, especially after COVID, digital transformation is at the forefront of many governments' agenda all around the world, but this can't really be done without trust. Citizens must trust that their data is being held in a reliable and accountable way and being used for the good. So, in Estonians' experience, from what I read, you rely on a combination of three pillars, which is data confidentiality, data availability, and data integrity. And my question is, what exactly are those, and how do you do to make sure that they're provided and they're guaranteed?
Yeah, these three pillars, I always like to make everybody to remember how this has been built. I always ask them to imagine Estonia as a very big manor or a house that has three pillars. And what would happen when you would take one of these pillars away? The house would either collapse or there could be some loss of balance. And that's the same thing with building the state of technology. If you are missing one of these pillars, then your state is either like going that way with the wind, and there is a lot of like trouble happening. So that's why these three pillars 100% always need to be there. And to explain what these pillars first of all are, and first of all, the data confidentiality means that every time that our people are logging into the system, they have to do that in a way that this is very confidential, and they can provide their identity in a safest way. So this is why we provide them either identity card, mobile ID, smart ID, or the residency card. So these solutions are not coming with just a username and a password, which are so hackable. But what they actually come with is two different PIN codes. PIN number 1, so that everybody could identify themselves. And PIN number 2, if you want to encrypt, sign, or do transactions. So these two PIN codes are the most important thing in your life. You need to know them here in your head, because they really matter, because you can again provide your identity by using these two different PIN codes. When the process of identifying yourself has been successful and been very confidential, then we jump over to that data availability, which I partly already talked about, like how we have stored information in a very decentralized way. It doesn't matter that if things are decentralized, that they wouldn't be able to communicate to each other. So that's why there has to be data availability, so that you can really access information from different platforms and you would have the most up-to-date information. And this is what we use these data exchange layer DXroad already for the past 20 years now. And we can get access to our latest information from every single platform. And then the data integrity, Estonia is also the first country in the world who started using blockchain on a national level. So we are using blockchain to provide the integrity of data. And that means that nobody can manipulate with our data and information, not even the state administrators there or hackers or anybody. Like, nobody can change the information that has been submitted before. And we use this, for example, also in our medical platforms. So medical data has been using also blockchain in this system. So when I go and see a doctor, then usually if there is one doctor visit, it's not just one single analysis that they do for me, but there's maybe different doctor offices that I need to visit for that. They do some kind of blood test and then the MRT or whatever analysis. It's going to be only one single summary for me in our medical platform. So that means that many different doctors, or maybe their secretaries or people that help the nurses, are going to submit the information into my one summary that I see as one single summary of my visit. That means that if one doctor is adding an information to the system, then the next doctor is not going to be able to delete the information that has been submitted by the previous doctor, so that we can't manipulate with our medical information. That means nobody can go log into the system, delete your blood test results, or replace your blood type with something else.
I'm curious to hear a bit about your e-residency program. So for those who might not know, Estonia's e-residency program, which enables individuals and businesses to set up shop financially, legally, and administratively in Estonia, has grown to over 80,000 e-residents since inception in 2015. The pandemic has shown that much of the global workforce is increasingly digital and increasingly mobile. So, what role can Estonia's e-residency program play in this new digital-first business landscape?
First of all, one thing that we really understood since very early days of our independence is that where business is easy, business will grow. And I'm not joking, because people are choosing locations where it's simple to run their business without having to go through again tons of paperwork, so that until the time that you really have your idea from the first point until you actually get to the point where you have been established in this business, providing all the papers and stuff, that you're already exhausted and maybe there is not so much enthusiasm anymore there. So the process itself has to be easy. Internally, our business sector is working very well, and we realize that there could be also more potential, so to attract the other people from other countries to really run their business here by using our e-residency solution. Today, by using the e-residency solution, everybody from any side of the world can apply online without having to make any physical visits to Estonia. So you just fill in your background, we'll make sure that you're not criminal, that's all we need to know. And then we will provide you the card, and then you have to pick it up from the nearest Estonian embassy for you, if you're in US, going to Washington, or in any other country that you're staying. So you have to go there, you can pick up the card, and then you can start running your business. And what kind of benefits this card would give to people is, first of all, that they can run their business on international level, and especially in the European Union. European Union market is one of the most attractive markets when we especially talk about consulting activities, web design, web platforms, and so on. So that means that we open by providing people a solution to run their business on a European level, like they could find new kind of customers super easily without having to go through again this kind of difficult hustle, like very much hassle when it comes to signing contracts and so on and so on. They can sign their documents online and do their business remotely wherever they are in the world. And this is pretty clear that everybody now, also even by the time of pandemic, had to work remotely. And there were not many countries who were able to provide all these solutions so that their people would be able to do things fully remotely. We have provided them a solution so that they don't have to come physically to do their stuff here on paper or show up somewhere all the time, but they can do everything remotely. And let's be honest, these 84,000 people that we have by today, this program has been going on only for the 6 years, so 84,000 people have decided that this is a solution for them.
That's really amazing to hear about it. I said in the beginning that 99% of the governmental services have moved online. But the question is, like, what about this 1% left? What can we expect next from Estonian digitalization process?
Maybe we'll have even more ideas, because one thing that I also wanted to bring it out here, one initiative that we just released 2 days ago at the Tallinn Digital Summit was our new digital testbed framework, which means that if there is anybody listening to us right now and who has ideas, who is a developer and feels that they want to do something also for the most digital country in the world, and maybe build some new services or make the existing services even better, then we have opened up all of our source code of our solutions, and we have a test bed where you can come, even if you're a university student, if you work in a startup, whoever you are, and you can start testing your solutions or your ideas. If that works for us and we see that there's potential and we would like to get this solution to us, then we will pay you. There's no procurement processes that you have to go through, but we can just buy your solution, and you can formulate yourself as a company and tell to everybody that you are implementing a new service to the most digitalized government, and then export your solution where it be somewhere else too. So we really try to be providing this kind of open innovation to everybody and be as close with private sector and academia as possible. So I'm really encouraging everybody who would have like crazy ideas what they would like to implement on a national level by using technology, then just come over here, test it, and let's see how it works.
I said it was the last question, but if I may, just very curious about
Yes.
something. Not only now, but you said before how close you work with the private sector. And then my question is, how does that go? Like, does the government have an idea and then you approach private sector to develop this idea, or is it the other way around? The private sector has created something and they come to you, or is there like annual meetings?
It's both of the ways actually, and we're quite lucky with by being a very small country because everybody know each other. We're keeping an eye from the public sector, of course, what the private sector is doing, and then maybe getting an idea what we would like to have. There has been again both cases where sometimes public sector has been saying, okay, we need a system like this. Would you be able to deliver? And there has been, of course, also cases, even for example, with a blockchain side, that the private sector companies have came and be like, okay, we see that there is a risk, and if you want to make your core information, your medical information even more secure, then we can provide you a blockchain system. We're going to introduce how does it work, and then we can start doing that together. So it has been working from both of the sides. The most important solution, the X-road system that I talked many times, the data exchange layer, was actually an idea that came from one guy who was doing his master thesis at Tallinn Technical University. He was analyzing the Estonian digital system 20 years ago, and then he was like, but we need a system like that so that different institutions could talk to each other. And then he wrote his master thesis about the X-road system. And then one company was like, we want to get that. And then the company kind of like formulated this even more secure and so on, and implemented with their ideas and everything. And the state bought this solution and said, okay, we should start using that. So I always say if a state needs to function well, then there is a magic triangle: academia, private sector, and public sector, and they always need to work together. Otherwise, nothing is gonna grow great in your state.
Well, thank you, Anett. And just a quick question on the digital testbed framework. If people are interested in getting involved in that, what are the deadlines and where can they learn more information?
You can find information from our e-Estonia.com, e-Estonia.com. There is a testbed there up there, and the date for applying is 10th of October. So we really encourage everybody once again to join and to see if they have an ideas. Really, I mean, this is your chance to make your ideas to really go, and we can really shout your names on the rooftops and say that this person or this company, this startup, was implementing something, such a cool thing that really helped our state, and we will help you to find new markets. We want to be very open, and seriously, if anybody has any idea that you would like to do, then don't be afraid, just apply, and we will be more than happy to work with you.
Sounds very exciting. Well, unfortunately, I think that's all the time we have today, although I'm sure we could go on for a lot longer. But I'd like to thank Anett Numa, Digital Transformation Advisor at e-Estonia, very much for her insights today. I'm Riley Kamener from State Up alongside Paula Rabikoff from Access Partnership. Thank you for watching DX Stories. You can watch more interviews with the world's leading digital transformation experts by visiting State Up and Access Partnership's websites and LinkedIn pages. But goodbye for now.